Hello and welcome to this video on ordering decimals. I'm going to refer a lot to the place value table in this video, so if you haven't already watched the video on place value, I suggest you do that first. Okay, would you rather have? So we've got a couple of values here on the screen, and here we've got, hopefully you can tell me that that is 49 pence, or in this case 50 pence. So probably, even though they're not huge amounts of money, you'd probably say you'd want this one more, 50 pence. What would you rather have here? Well, hopefully you can tell me that this is 90 pence and this is 9 pence. So probably you'd want to go for the greater value. What about here? On the left we've got £1 and 20 pence, and on the right we've got £1 and 2 pence. So again, you'd probably want the bigger value. What about here? Well, on the left we've got £5 and on the right we've got 50 pence. So the larger value there, £5. So when you're talking about decimals and ordering them, it's really important that you pay attention to the place value of the digits. So you can quite easily tell me which you'd rather have in this situation because we're really familiar with money. But money is basically just a decimal number, as you can see here. And the further to the left that the digit is, the greater the value. So for example here, we've got a 9 in what is the hundredths column. Whereas here we've got a 9 in the tenths column. So this is the greater value. Here the 2 is in the hundredths column, whereas the 2 here is in the tenths column. So here the greater value. So the further to the left that same digit is, in this case the 2, the further it is on the left, in this case it's in the tenths column, the greater its value. Here the 5 is in the tenths column, whereas here the 5 is in the units or ones column. So here the 5 has greater value. So, as I said, we're going to refer a lot to the place value table. And if we've got a 5 here in the units or ones column, then it's less of a value than if the 5 is positioned here, for example. And similarly, if you've got a 5 in this column, then it is of greater value, that's 5.0, then it is of greater value than if the 5 is in this column. So the decimal point is going all the way down this line here. Now this is really important when it comes to ordering decimals. So let's start off with a nice straightforward example where we've got some pound signs and therefore I've made it into money. So order these decimals from smallest to biggest. So here I'm going to look for where the different digits are and what place value column they're in. Well, here I've got no units, here I've got 1 unit, and here I've got no units. So clearly this one's going to actually be the biggest. So I can put here straight away that this one's actually going to be the biggest because I've got something there in the units column, whereas my other two values I've got nothing in the units column there. But now how do I distinguish between the two that are left? So this one's gone. How do I distinguish between this number, 0.51 or 51 pence, and this one, 0.15 or 15 pence? Well, I then have to look at the next column. So I'm not looking at the units column anymore. I'm now going to look at this column. So here I've got 5 in the tenths column. And here I've got a 1 in the tenths column. Therefore, this is the greater value. This has got greater value than this one. So therefore, this one must be the smallest. So 15 pence is the smallest. And 51 pence goes in the middle. So that's a nice straightforward example because it's money. And we're all quite familiar with money. Order these decimals from smallest to biggest. So now there is no pound sign. So we have to think about them as just numbers without pound sign, so not money. But we can quite easily do this. We just need to look at the place value table. So I'm going to put all these numbers in the place value grid. So I'm going to put 0.4 here. I'm going to put 0.23. (0.32) and 0.04. And none of them have anything in the units column. So, okay, so there's 0, 0, 0, 0. There's nothing in the units column for any of them. But then I need to, therefore, pay attention to the tenths column. Well, here, I've got a 4 here, so therefore that one must be the largest because that's a 2, that's a 3, and that's a 0. So if I've got a high number here in this tenths column, and there's nothing here in any of the units columns, then this one must be the largest, or the biggest. Just because there aren't any more digits after it, doesn't mean it still can't have the highest value. So 0.4, I'm going to put straight away as the biggest. So I can eliminate that one. So what's left? Well, I've got 0.23, I've got 0.32, and I've got 0.04. So I can go down this tenths column. That's a 2, that's a 3. If that's a 3, that's the highest number there in that column, so that must be the next, well, it's the biggest but on this side, so 0.32. Or I could equally have just looked at that 0 one and said, well, that must be the smallest. So 0.04 can go there, because there is nothing there in the tenths column. And therefore the one that is left is the 0.23. Another way that you can look at this is to actually put a pound sign at the front of them. You can easily do this. So that is 0.4. We'll come back to that in a second. This one you can think about as being 23 pence. This one you can think about as being 32 pence. And this one you can think about as being 4 pence. Now what's this? Well, I can't just put a 0 in there, but I can put a 0 after it. Okay, and now it becomes 40 pence. And then you could have just arranged them in order of size, thinking about them as values of money. Okay, let's look at another example here. So again, I'm going to use my place value grid because that helps. So 0.62, 0.02, 0.26, and 0.6. Okay, so again, I've got nothing in this units column here. 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so then I have to pay attention to the tenths column. Okay, well I've got a 6 there, a 0 there, a 2 there, and a 6 there. Okay, so I'm not sure about these ones that have both got 6s at the moment, but I can tell easily that this one is the smallest number. It's got the lowest value because there's nothing in that tenths column. Yes, it's got a 2 there, but the fact is that the tenths column has greater value than the hundredths column. So if there's nothing there, then I know it must be the smallest number. So 0.02 must go there. So I can now eliminate that. So what's left? Well, we've got 0.62 at the top, 0.26, and then 0.6. Well, looking down that tenths column, clearly these 0.62 and 0.6 are going to be on the larger side of things, so this one must be the next 0.26. Okay, now how to compare these two that are left? Well, they've both got 6 in the tenths column, so therefore then I need to pay attention to the hundredths column. Okay, well here I've got a 2, but what's here? Well, there is nothing, but I can represent that by putting a 0 there. So this is basically 0.62 or 0.60, and if you want to help yourselves out, you could just put a pound sign there and say, well, that's 62 pence. And that's 60 pence. So clearly 0.6, so take it back to its original form, okay, because it was here, like this. We just put that 0 on the end to make it nicer for ourselves. 0.6 is next, and then finally the biggest is 0.62. Okay, order these decimals from smallest to biggest. Okay, I'm going to put these in the place value table. We've got 1.4. We've got 0.41. 0.1 and 0.4. Okay. So looking at the units column, we've got a 1 there and a 0, 0, 0. So therefore, this one must be the biggest because that has got something in the units column. So 1.4 is going to be on the biggest space there. So I can eliminate that. What have I got left? Well, I've got 0.41, 0.1 and 0.4. So I now need to turn my attention to the tenths column. Well, I've got 4 there and a 4 there. So I don't really know the difference between those at the moment, but I can see that this is a low value there, so that must be the smallest, 0.1 there. So I can now eliminate that. Okay, and we've got left 0.41 and 0.4. So if I look at the tenths column, they've both got a 4 there. So now I need to look at the hundredths column. What have we got in the hundredths column? We've got a 1 here, and we've got what looks like nothing there, but remember we can put a 0 there. And then of course we can think about it as, ooh, not like that, neater pound sign than that. We can make it 41 pence and 40 pence. So I'm going to put them in order like this, so 0.4, because remember, even though we've made it into 40 pence, we've got to put it back into its original form, which was like this. So make sure you write it back in its original form. And then bigger than that was 0.41. Really important that you don't get this confused with being 4 pence. Okay, lots of students think that 0.4 is 4 pence, but no, the 0 goes on the end, very, very different to 4 pence, which would look like this. So 4 pence is 0.04. Okay, the 4 is in the hundredths column. Okay, order these decimals from smallest to biggest: 3.1, 0.3, 0.13 and 3. Okay, so we've got 3.1, 0.3, 0.13 and 3. Well, 3, where does that go? Well, it's not got a decimal point visible, but of course it is there. We can just write it as 3.0. We could easily do that, but just for for example purposes, I'm just going to take that away for a second, but that 3 is in the units column, okay, so that 3 is there. Okay, so I'm going to look first at my units column. Well, I've got a 3, a 0, a 0 and a 3. Okay, so I've got two numbers that have got 3 in the units column and two numbers that got 0 in the units column. Okay, so I can see therefore that the 3's are going to be my biggest number, but let's compare them. Well, we've got 3.1 and we've got 3, but what do we say we could put here? We can put a 0.0 here, okay? So we've got 3.1 and 3.0. So 3.1 is going to be the biggest there. 3.1. And I can cross that out. And then 3 is just a bit smaller than that, which will go there. Okay, so I've now eliminated those. And then what am I going to do next? I'm going to look at my tenths column, because these have both got 0 in the units column, so I can't compare them using that column. Look here, we've got a 3 and a 1, so the 3 is obviously bigger than the 1, which means the 0.13 is the smallest. And then the 0.3 goes here. Okay, here are a couple of questions for you to have a go at yourself. So write them out and write them from smallest to biggest. So pause the video, have a go at these, and then resume the video to see the answers. And here are the answers. Well done for having a go at those.